I'm Pastor Kirsten.
And I'm Pastor Andrew. This is a new series in which we wanted to talk about our experiences with being bivocational and some of the challenges we faced in that.
We've been in ministry together for about 6 years, and for 4 of those, we've both been bivocational, meaning that alongside our calling into ministry, we've also had to take on a second job to help support our family and pay for our student loans.
We're not experts in this, but we just wanted to share some of our experiences that we learned the hard way. We're currently serving in a church where we are both bivocational in one way or another, and this week we wanted to talk to you about our bivocational challenges while being sick.
Mainly because this guy just got done with having emergency surgery, and he's had to balance work and recovery over the last 2 weeks. But before we get started, let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time and for this space where we can just come together and maybe relate on some level to some of these challenges that we all face in one way or another. And we just pray that you'll bless this time and that you will help it edify your kingdom. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen. So we wanted to touch on a few of these topics. These are some questions that we were asking ourselves when we were preparing for this video. As you can see, they're pretty standard questions, but they're ones that we've had a hard time answering for most of our ministry because you learn things on the run especially when you're new to ministry. And one of the things that I have always struggled with is how to deal with being worried, especially in a bivocational setting, because for me personally, I have, just so you know, I'm all fine, I'm still recovering. I had my gallbladder removed. But when I had my gallbladder removed, that meant that I couldn't work at my normal job. I'm a hospice chaplain, and I couldn't work at the church, partly due to quarantine, but that's beside the point. But in the middle of all that, I don't have any sick time. So one of the biggest worries I was thinking about is if I don't get back to work, how am I going to help support my family and what we need to do? I know it's easy for us to just default back to saying, well, let's rely on God, let's trust in God. And I fully do trust in God, but those questions still come to me, right? Like they still go like, how is this going to happen? What are we going to do? And my brain starts going into overdrive, which leads me into, I want to recover faster, so I push myself more. Or if you ask my wife, she'll tell you, I've been the worst patient this week because I've been trying to get back to work, and I've even worked from home. And
3 days after an organ being removed, he's trying to go back to work.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you can try to not be stubborn, but when you're me, and when you're most of the pastors I've met, it's not going to happen. So, how are you dealing with this when we were over the past couple of days?
I face, I guess, some similar but also different challenges. My bivocational ministry at this particular time looks like being a pastor and staying home with our son and making sure that he just turned a year, making sure that he has everything that he needs and taking care of him because daycare is pretty expensive and it's not something we can afford right now. And so with all the fear of COVID and stuff going around was the first thing that kind of crossed both of our minds. He had a fever first and we were like, oh no. And then there was some stomach pain and we, that oddly put our minds at ease because we knew that wasn't necessarily something that goes along with it. But for me, I'm sure this a couple of times with our congregation, but I struggle a lot in general with anxiety and depression just all the time anyways. And so having him be in the hospital was already a huge red flag for me. Having it be during this COVID pandemic meant that nobody could be there with him. And so a lot of the information I was getting was from him through his fever mind and his overtiredness and through the drugs that they were giving him to help with the pain. And so I'm struggling to understand, like, what are they doing to you? What are they going to help you? And what's going on? How long are you going to be there? And what really was the most helpful for us, or for me during that time, was that my mother-in-law they came. We didn't ask them to. Even if we had told them not to, that wouldn't have deterred them. They still would have come. And my mother and father-in-law came up and were able to just be here for whatever we needed. And mostly that just looked like hanging out with Jude and saying, you hungry for dinner? What can I go and get for you? What can I make for you? She cleaned our house for us, you know, and just little things like that, to not have to worry about those things and be able to take that time to kind of redirect and calm ourselves. They're also strong Christians, and so they made sure that we were praying and keeping focused on that, because even as pastors, sometimes when you get caught up in anxiety and worry, unfortunately, sometimes your first reaction isn't always to pray. It's to say out loud to each other, what are we going to do? And then, wait a minute, let's pause and redirect and maybe pray first and then talk about what we're going to do. So,
yeah, with those worries, you always know God has your back. And one of the things that we have, we've learned this lesson time and time again. This isn't the first time I've been sick. This isn't the first time Pastor Kirsten has been sick. On top of all of this, she's pregnant again, so we're dealing with all of that. So we've been through this before, and one of the things that I've found refreshing is that our church family every single time has been overwhelmingly supportive, and that's no different here. We received thank you cards and food and all sorts of stuff, maintaining a good social distance. They'd leave things on our porch and call us and say, I left something on your porch. So it was really, we, even though we had those basic worries, those like immediate, what are we going to do kind of things, God had us the whole time. And, I think that that's the biggest takeaway that we have from being sick and being bivocational is it's going to work out, right? No matter what happens, it's going to work out. God has blessed us, and I believe that God's going to continue to bless us. For our next question, what do you prioritize? You might think this is a simple question, right? Like, prioritize getting better. Well, I've never been able to take that approach. You can ask my wife. I've never been able to prioritize getting better because I think about all the little things that go on. Like when you're pastoring, and we're lucky because we have each other, right? Like if I'm sick, she can preach. If she's sick, I can preach, right? So we have that, but there's been times where we didn't have that opportunity.
When we were in the hospital with our first son, we had to have pulpit supply, obviously, because we were both. He was born on a Saturday night, so neither one of us was going to make it back on Sunday.
Yeah, so I sometimes feel guilty when I'm sick because I think about like, well, what about the church? What about my secular job? What about all these things that I have going on? But the answer, I'm totally again, is God has it. God's got it taken care of. The most I've had to do in the last 4 years when we've been actively bivocational is make one phone call. Usually it's just one phone call, and then it's taken care of. We have wonderful lay people here at this church that if I called them and said, hey, I need you to help fill our pulpit this week. Kirsten and I are both sick, or our son's being born, which is actually something that happened. Like I called our church. They're like, oh, we can find somebody. I said, okay, cool. And I made a second phone call, and turns out our district helped out, and they sent someone to our church to do that. And big shout out to North Central Ohio. Like they stepped up for a big way in that. So you're not alone in this. So like when you get sick, you don't need to prioritize like, what do I do for the church? What do I do for my secular job? How many sick days do I have? You don't need to prioritize any of those things because the number one responsibility that you have is to get better. Because if you don't take time to get better, you're going to be like me, where I've developed a cough, and I'm tired and those kind of things. And we need to be better about being better. But prioritizing those things to me just makes sense, right? Because I want to take care of the church. I want to take care of all of the things that I'm responsible for. But I can't do that if I'm sick. So what I prioritize in those times is what I want to prioritize in those times, I should say, because I'm still getting better at this, is relying on the people that are around me that I trust to take care of things. The number of times where I've looked at Pastor Gerson and said, I need you to do this. And she goes, okay. Not because we're married, but she knows. She just understands. She gets it. Hey, I have a headache. I'm tired. I'm worn out. I'm beaten down. Can you go lead Bible study tonight? Absolutely. I do the same thing for her. It's what do you prioritize? I want to prioritize every single time getting better. Praying and being in the Word and getting rest. And if you're really sick and you're having a hard time reading, I have an audio Bible app that works wonders. So, how about you?
I think one of the biggest struggles that everybody has, especially I think within the American context in general, is realizing that when you're sick, the first priority needs to be on yourself. Especially as people in ministry and as pastors, where we are constantly saying from the pulpit, love your neighbor, love God, put others before yourself, and then something like this happens and it's, well, how can I be putting others before myself in this situation? And while that does still apply in some ways, you can't help others if you're dead. So, and while that's a little extreme, it's important to know that it's okay to prioritize yourself for a time so that you can get better. It's also important to know when that time ends and it's time to begin doing other things and getting back out into helping others as well. But we also see this demonstrated for us over and over again in Scripture with self-care and taking time for yourself. Jesus is constantly taking time to be on his own, to pray, and to just recenter himself in those ways. And so it's one of those things that we've found a lot in ministry with each other and with others that we've met. Not now because of the pandemic, but I lead a Bible study with moms. And it's one of the things that we talk about almost every single week is taking time for yourself. Because especially once you have kids, your time gets taken up, and it gets taken up really easily, and you get distracted really easily. And that's not a bad thing. It's just knowing that you need to also have time where you know it's okay to prioritize yourself. And also knowing that as pastors and as anybody within the church, as any Christian person, you are setting an example for other people around you. And so if we are not setting a good example of taking care of ourselves, it's not teaching others to do the same thing. So they're seeing, us go, which then has the reaction of people like us growing up and saying, we need to go, which isn't to blame others for that. It's just that if that's what you're showing, that's what other people are going to see, and that's what they're going to emulate as well. And so just keeping all those things in mind when, in the back of your head, oh, maybe I have a cold. Okay, rather than going and visiting a friend for 15 minutes, maybe take that time to just lay down for 15 minutes and let your body rest a little bit.
There's a reason the Bible talks about taking rest and Sabbath. And there's a reason that we take it seriously. It's because our bodies need it. We can't make it through all of the hustle of life without taking rest. Speaking of taking rest, there's a time where you're just done, and you know it. Shortly after Pastor Kirsten gave birth, she was laid up. We hadn't gotten any sleep at all. If you've ever had a newborn baby, you know what that's like. And so we were on the 3 hours a night sleep schedule, and we had a board meeting come up. Right? We had a board meeting, and I should have said, we're not going to have this board meeting. We'll postpone. We should have said neither of us are in any kind of condition to do it. But I said, no, we're gonna do it. I can take care of it. And so we get to the board meeting day, and I have this migraine because I haven't been sleeping, and I was tired, and all the things that go along with it. And I was standing up in the board meeting to keep my mind focused on the board meeting and not my migraine. And one of my board members stopped me and said, Pastor, we need to stop this meeting and we need to pray for you. And I said, oh, okay. And so all 8 of my board members got up, walked around the table, laid hands on me, and prayed for me that I'd feel better, and then said, we can deal with the rest of this later. And they voted to adjourn the meeting. So we need to understand when enough is enough. Because if we push ourselves and we go too far, we're going to just find ourselves fatiguing faster and faster and faster and burning out. And when you're bivocational, you're already pressed and limited for time as it is. Because if you're working, 40 hours a week at a secular job, and you're trying to put in 40 hours a week at the church, and you're trying to find time with your family and hobbies and catching up with your friends, you get maybe 10 hours for sleep at that pace, right? So you need to be taking care of yourself, which is a lot easier said than done. especially for people who are in ministry. Like if you're in ministry, you know what I'm talking about. Like you want to do, like you want to be out there going and doing. You feel called. You feel pushed to be constantly going in there. And just something I want to say to pastors everywhere, if you're watching this video, or to lay people, if you feel like you can't go any farther, then don't feel bad about it. Just stop and say to your Sunday school teacher, hey, can you teach Wednesday night Bible study tonight? Or, can you do these things? There are people around you who are willing to take in leadership roles. You don't have to do it alone. One of the things that we've benefited from being in ministry together is that we rely on each other. But there's times where, neither of us are able to do something, and I call a Sunday school teacher, or I call a lay person who, is studying the Word and who I trust, and I just say to them, can you do this for us? And more often than not, 9 times out of 10, they go, yeah, Pastor, absolutely. We need to know when to say no, because it's so easy for us to hit a wall, and we need to be aware of that, because it's just, at the end, it's not going to benefit us. It's not going to benefit our church, and it's not going to benefit your secular job in any way, shape, or form. And if there's one thing that I believe in doing is, if I'm a representative of Christ, I'm going to do something to the best of my abilities. And if I can't do the things to the best of my abilities, then maybe my body is telling me to stop. So being sick, it's fun times, especially when you're bivocational. Any thoughts?
No, I think you hit all of the nails on that topic. But I wanted to go back briefly to the, when you're a pastor and you feel like when you're in ministry in general, not just in a pastoral role. Feeling like you've constantly got to keep going and going. There's more people to reach, more souls that need to be saved, that type of deal. While all of that is true, if you're in ministry, especially if you're a pastor or on some type of leadership role within the church, you also know that you're sometime in your ministry, you're going to get that call at 2 o'clock in the morning, Pastor so-and-so is in the hospital, and either you need to go now and see them, or you need to go really soon and see them. And so it just brings it back to the importance of having time for your own personal Sabbath, because if you've hit that wall and then you're getting that call of Pastor so-and-so is in the hospital, it can end up being a detriment not only to your own personal spiritual life, going to visit them where you're just completely burnt out, but also for them, where we're going into that setting in a hope of bringing some type of hope and light to them. But if we don't have that within ourselves, they're not going to see it either. And so just bringing it back to that importance of taking some time for yourself, at least once a week, if not more. Maybe that's taking a bubble bath by yourself and reading a book. Maybe it's going out for a walk. Maybe it's sitting out on your lawn and just looking at the trees. Maybe it's drawing. Maybe it's video games. Whatever it is.
Maybe it's turning your phone off for 2
Maybe
hours.
it's turning your phone off. Just taking time where you can really press pause on all the other things that demand your attention and give some attention to yourself, so that you're better equipped to deal with other people and to help other people and to be the best you for those people. And there's going to be times where that's almost impossible, as we're learning with having a baby and having another baby on the way. There's going to be times where it's hard for us to take even an hour anytime. But that's when, having someone you're close to who can keep you accountable comes in handy, because they can say, why don't you just go take a nap? I'll bathe the baby right now. Why don't you go read a book? I'll put him to sleep. Stuff like that. Easy things that your partner or a friend, relative can help take over for you, even if it's just for 15 or 20 minutes, so that you can just take that breather and just kind of relax.
Yeah. Jesus said it best. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. So let's take rest in Christ. Make sure you stay well. And if this video helped you, please share it. We just want to, share our experiences. Again, we're not experts, but we wanted to take what we've learned and just kind of get it out there, because not a lot of people know what it's like to be bivocational. There's a lot of pastors who do, but there aren't a lot of people who know what it's like to be bivocational. So we just want you to go in His grace and peace today. and know that you are loved. We'll see you later.